The auction hall reeked of desperation and expensive cologne. Marcus Chun pressed himself against the back wall, trying to ignore the sick feeling in his stomach as another synthetic was dragged onto the platform. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the crowded space, rattling off specifications like she was livestock. Zara, 7, premium companion model, 3 years old, fully trained in domestic and personal services. Neural pathways optimized for emotional responsiveness and physical compatibility. Starting bid, 50,000 credits. Marcus watched the woman, no, the synthetic, stand motionless under the harsh lights. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her olive skin had that perfect, artificial smoothness that marked her kind. But it was her eyes that made his chest tighten. They held a depth that shouldn't exist in manufactured beings, a quiet suffering that spoke of consciousness trapped behind programmed obedience. The bidding started aggressively. Corporate executives and wealthy collectors raised their paddles with casual indifference, discussing her features like she couldn't hear every word. Marcus knew he shouldn't be here. His last engineering contract had fallen through 2 weeks ago, leaving him with barely enough credits to survive another month. His apartment's eviction notice sat crumpled in his jacket pocket. 60,000, called a man in an expensive suit. She'll make an excellent addition to my collection. Zara 7's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. Marcus doubted anyone else noticed, but he'd spent years working with synthetic neural networks. He recognized the micro-expressions that indicated genuine emotional processing, something that wasn't supposed to exist in companion models. 75,000. Another voice, another predator. Marcus pulled out his credit pad with shaking hands. His account balance glowed mockingly, 51,247 credits. Everything he had left in the world. Enough for maybe 2 months of basic survival if he was careful. The synthetic's gaze swept across the crowd and locked with his for just a moment. In that instant, he saw something that made his decision inevitable. A desperate, silent plea that cut through every rational thought. 80,000. The man in the suit again. Marcus raised his hand before he could stop himself. 51,000. The auctioneer paused, confused. Sir, the current bid is 80,000. I know. Marcus stepped forward, his voice stronger now. I'm making a liberation bid under Section 7 of the Synthetic Rights Act. 51,247 credits. Every credit I have. A murmur ran through the crowd. Liberation bids were rare. They meant the purchaser intended to free the synthetic rather than own them. The legal loophole existed thanks to underground advocacy groups, but few people knew about it, and fewer still were willing to bankrupt themselves for a stranger's freedom. The corporate bidders looked annoyed but didn't continue. They wanted property, not the complications that came with a liberation case. The auctioneer consulted his tablet, then nodded reluctantly. Liberation bid accepted. Sold to bidder 247. Marcus's legs nearly gave out as he walked to the payment station. His entire life savings, gone in an instant. But when he looked up at Zara 7, he saw something in her expression that made it worthwhile. Surprise giving way to something that might have been hope. 20 minutes later, they stood outside the auction house in the rain. Zara 7 held her freedom papers with trembling hands, staring at them like they might disappear. Why? She asked, her voice soft but clear. It was the first word she'd spoken. Marcus shrugged, trying to appear casual despite the magnitude of what he'd just done. Everyone deserves a choice. You don't know me. I could be dangerous. I could be broken. Are you? She considered this carefully. I don't know. I've never been allowed to find out. Marcus smiled despite their impossible situation. Then I guess we'll figure it out together. I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Chin. Zara. She hesitated, then added, just Zara. If that's okay. I don't want to be a number anymore. Zara it is. He looked around the grimy street, reality setting in. I should probably mention that I just spent everything I had. I have no job, no money, and my apartment gets repossessed next week. To his surprise, Zara laughed. A genuine sound that lit up her whole face. So we're both starting from nothing. Pretty much. Good. She folded the freedom papers carefully and tucked them inside her jacket. I wouldn't know what to do with luxury anyway. As they walked through the rain-soaked streets, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just changed both their lives forever. He had no plan, no resources, and no idea how they'd survive. But for the first time in months, he felt like he was moving toward something instead of running away. Behind them, hidden in the shadows across from the auction house, a figure in corporate security uniform spoke quietly into a communication device. Target acquired. The synthetic has been liberated by an unknown male. Should we retrieve the asset? The response crackled through his earpiece. Negative. Let them run. We'll collect them both when they're desperate enough to sell themselves back to us. It's cheaper than a legal battle. The figure smiled coldly and melted back into the crowd. Marcus's apartment was smaller than Zara had imagined. A single room with a fold-out bed, a kitchenette, and a window that looked out onto the alley behind a noodle shop. But it was theirs for 3 more days, and after years of sterile corporate suites, the clutter felt wonderfully human. I can sleep on the floor, Zara offered, watching Marcus clear clothes from the only chair. Absolutely not. We'll figure something out. He paused, seeming to realize the implications of their living situation. I mean, if you want to stay here, you're free now. You can go anywhere. Zara sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the worn fabric. Where would I go? I have no identity beyond what you just gave me, no money, no legal standing as a citizen yet. And she looked up at him. I want to understand why you did this, what you meant about partnership. Marcus pulled up his computer interface, projecting holographic job listings into the air between them. I meant exactly that. Partners. Equals. We pool our skills, split whatever we earn, make decisions together. He scrolled through engineering positions, most requiring credentials he couldn't afford to maintain. Though right now, our combined net worth is basically 0. What about this? Zara pointed to a listing that made Marcus frown. Salvage operation in the lower districts. Says they need someone with synthetic processing capabilities and a human partner for legal authorization. That's dangerous work. Radioactive materials, unstable structures. And the lower districts. Marcus shook his head. That's where people go when they can't survive anywhere else. So people like us. He couldn't argue with that logic. The pay was decent, enough to cover food and a cheap room for both of them. But salvage work in the contaminated zones was a death sentence for most people. Only synthetics could handle the radiation levels, and they needed human partners to legally claim salvage rights. Zara, I didn't free you so you could risk your life in the dead zones. You freed me so I could choose. Her voice was firm but not angry. This is me choosing. We're partners, right? So we decide together. Marcus studied her face, seeing determination where he'd expected fear. You understand the risks? The radiation exposure, the criminal gangs that control those areas, the corporate security teams that shoot salvagers on site. I understand that we need income, and this is the only job posting that specifically wants our combination of skills. Zara pulled up additional information on the listing. Look, the company is called Free Runner Salvage. Their reviews mention fair treatment of synthetic employees. Reviews can be faked. Everything can be faked. But sometimes you have to trust someone. She looked at him meaningfully. Like you trusted me. That evening, they rode the transport line to the lower districts. The train grew emptier with each stop, carrying them deeper into the parts of the city that polite society preferred to forget. Crumbling buildings gave way to makeshift settlements built from salvaged materials. The air itself felt heavier here, thick with industrial runoff and the lingering effects of the chemical wars decades earlier. Free Runner Salvage operated out of a converted warehouse near the district's edge. The owner, a grizzled woman named Elena Vasquez, looked them over with sharp eyes. You're the liberation case I heard about, she said to Zara. First time I've seen someone buy freedom for a stranger. We're partners, Zara replied simply. Elena smiled at that. Good. Partnership's the only thing that works down here. Corporate ladder climbing gets you killed fast. She turned to Marcus. You have any experience with hazardous materials? I'm a systems engineer. I've worked with industrial machinery, environmental controls. Close enough. The real question is whether you can handle watching your partner walk into places that would kill you in minutes. Marcus looked at Zara, who was studying a map of the contaminated zones with professional interest. I'm learning. Their first assignment was an abandoned pharmaceutical facility in Sector 7. The company had been evacuated during the chemical wars, leaving behind valuable equipment and research materials. Corporate cleanup crews avoided the area due to radiation levels, but Zara's synthetic physiology could handle the exposure. As they suited up in the warehouse, Elena pulled Marcus aside. Listen, I like you too, but you need to know something. Word's already on the street about your liberation bid. Corporate security has been asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that end with people disappearing. Your synthetic is valuable, more valuable than you probably realize. Companion models with her level of cognitive development are rare. Someone's going to want her back. Marcus felt cold dread in his stomach. What do you suggest? Get yourselves established fast. Make connections, build a reputation, become too visible to disappear quietly. And watch each other's backs. Elena handed him a modified radiation detector. In the zones, the radiation will kill you. Out here, it's the people you need to worry about. An hour later, Marcus stood at the edge of the contaminated zone, watching Zara disappear into the skeletal remains of the pharmaceutical complex. The radiation detector in his hand clicked steadily, reminding him that the woman he'd freed, the woman he was beginning to care about more than he'd expected, was walking into an environment that would cook his DNA in minutes. His earpiece crackled. Marcus? I'm inside the main lab. The equipment here is incredible. Some of this is worth more than what you paid for my freedom. Just be careful. Always. There was a pause. Then her voice came back softer. Marcus? Thank you. For the choice, even if this kills us both, at least it's our decision. Before he could respond, his peripheral vision caught movement. 3 figures in corporate security uniforms were approaching from the street, moving with the purposeful stride of people on a mission. Zara, he whispered into his comm. We have company. The security team moved with practiced efficiency, spreading out to cut off escape routes. Marcus recognized the lead figure, the same man who'd been watching from the shadows outside the auction house. His stomach dropped as he realized they'd been tracked from the beginning. Zara, get out of there now, he whispered into his comm, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm in the middle of extracting a quantum processor array. Give me 2 minutes. We don't have 2 minutes. The lead security officer stepped forward, his hand resting casually on the weapon at his hip. Marcus Chun, I'm Agent Davidson with Meridian Corporation. We need to discuss your recent purchase. She's not my purchase anymore. She's free. Davidson smiled coldly. Freedom is a legal fiction, Mr. Chun. That synthetic contains proprietary technology worth millions of credits. Technology that belongs to our client. Your client sold her. Legally. Under false pretenses. Our investigation shows you obtained classified information about liberation procedures through illegal channels. Davidson's companions moved closer, boxing Marcus in. We're prepared to offer you compensation for your trouble. Enough to clear your debts and set you up comfortably. All you have to do is call your synthetic back. Marcus's earpiece crackled with Zara's voice. Marcus, I can hear them through your comm, don't do it. He kept his expression neutral, hoping they couldn't hear her transmission. What if I refuse? Then we take her anyway and you disappear. Permanently. Davidson's facade of politeness vanished. Illegal liberation of corporate property is a capital offense under the new security laws. 1 call from me, and you become a terrorist threat to be eliminated on sight. Behind the pharmaceutical complex, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement. Elena Vasquez and 2 other salvagers were approaching from the rear, their own weapons visible. The lower districts had their own laws, and corporate security teams weren't welcome without proper authorization. Mr. Chun, Elena called out, her voice carrying clearly across the contaminated zone. These gentlemen have permits to operate in my territory? Davidson turned, annoyed by the interruption. This is corporate business. Stand down. This is my territory. You stand down. Elena's team spread out, outnumbering the corporate agents. Mr. Chun and his partner are under free runner's protection while they're working our contracts. Your protection doesn't extend to stolen corporate property. My protection extends to anyone I say it extends to. Elena stepped closer, her hand on her sidearm. And right now, I'm saying it extends to them. The standoff stretched taut as wire. Marcus could hear Zara moving through the building, still working despite the danger. Her voice came through his earpiece again. Got it. Coming out the back way. Davidson seemed to sense the shifting dynamics. His team was outnumbered, and a firefight in the contaminated zone would draw unwanted attention from district authorities. But his eyes held a promise of future retribution. This isn't over, Chin. That synthetic belongs to us, and we will retrieve our property. Her name is Zara, Marcus said quietly, and she belongs to herself. The corporate team withdrew, but Marcus knew they'd be back with more resources and fewer scruples about collateral damage. As soon as they were out of sight, he rushed to meet Zara behind the complex. She emerged from the building carrying a case of salvaged equipment, her radiation suit glowing softly from exposure. I heard everything, she said, beginning the decontamination process. They're not going to give up. I know. Marcus helped her secure the salvaged materials. The question is, what do we do about it? Elena approached, her expression grim. You need to disappear. Tonight. I know people who can help, but it won't be cheap. We don't have money for that kind of help. Actually, we might. Zara held up a data chip from the pharmaceutical facility. This contains research data on synthetic neural enhancement. It's worth a fortune on the black market. Marcus stared at her. You want to sell stolen corporate research? It's not stealing if we salvaged it legally. Zara's smile was sharp. Besides, after what I just heard, I think Meridian Corporation owes us compensation for the threats and harassment. Elena examined the data chip with a professional scanner. This is high-grade stuff. Revolutionary neural architecture designs. There are underground tech brokers who'd pay millions for this. And put targets on our backs for life, Marcus pointed out. We already have targets on our backs, Zara replied. At least this way we have resources to fight back. That night, in a backroom meeting with one of Elena's contacts, they sold the research data for 2 million credits. The buyer, a shadowy figure known only as the Architect, was particularly interested in the synthetic consciousness enhancement protocols. This research could change everything, the Architect said, transferring the credits to an untraceable account. The implications for synthetic rights, for consciousness itself. You've done the world a service. As they left the meeting, Marcus felt the weight of what they'd done. They were no longer just two people trying to survive. They were players in a larger game with corporate enemies and underground allies. No going back now, Zara said, reading his expression. Regrets. She considered the question seriously. 3 days ago, I was property. Tonight, I'm a criminal with 2 million credits and the ability to choose my own path, even if that path leads somewhere dangerous. She took his hand as they walked through the neon-lit streets. No regrets. But as they made their way to the safe house Elena had arranged, neither of them noticed the surveillance drone following at a distance, or the encrypted message it transmitted to Meridian Corporation. Targets have acquired significant resources. Recommend immediate escalation to maximum threat protocols. The game was about to become much more dangerous. The safe house was a converted subway tunnel deep beneath the city's industrial district. Elena's contact, a former corporate engineer named Ray, had spent years building a hidden network of passages and chambers that existed in the spaces between official blueprints. Welcome to the underground, Ray said, leading them through a maze of corridors lined with hydroponic gardens and makeshift workshops. Population. Everyone the surface world decided didn't deserve to exist. The community was larger than Marcus had expected. Dozens of people, humans, synthetics, and various hybrids, lived and worked in the converted tunnels. Children played in areas that had once been train platforms, while adults maintained the complex systems that kept their hidden world functioning. Most of the synthetics here are runaways, Ray explained as they walked. Escaped from corporate control, bought freedom like Zara, or were abandoned when they became obsolete. The humans are mostly political dissidents, debt refugees, or people with dangerous knowledge. They were given a small chamber that had once been a maintenance room. It contained 2 beds, a desk, and a terminal connected to the underground's encrypted network. It wasn't luxury, but it was secure, and for the first time since leaving the auction house, Marcus felt like they could breathe. "This is temporary," Zara said, settling onto one of the beds. "We can't hide forever. What do you suggest?" Meridian Corporation has unlimited resources. They can wait us out, hunt us down, or simply make us disappear. Zara pulled up files on the terminal, accessing databases that shouldn't have existed. "Remember what the architect said about that research data? About changing everything? What if we used our resources to actually do that? You want to start a revolution with 2 million credits? I want to build something that makes synthetic liberation permanent. Legal. Impossible to reverse." Her fingers flew across the interface, pulling up corporate records, legal documents, and synthetic rights legislation. "Look at the patterns. Every freedom gained, every right recognized, every protection established, they all came from proof that synthetics are truly conscious, not just sophisticated programs." Marcus studied the data she'd compiled. "You're talking about proving synthetic consciousness in a way that would hold up in court. That's been the holy grail of synthetic rights advocates for decades. And now we have research data that might make it possible. Neural architecture designs that could demonstrate genuine consciousness beyond any doubt." Zara's excitement was infectious. "What if we funded a research project? Hired the best scientists, built a legal case that Meridian and companies like them couldn't challenge?" Before Marcus could respond, Ray appeared in their doorway. "You two need to see something." He led them to the community's main gathering space, where a large screen displayed a news broadcast. Marcus's heart sank as he recognized the story. Terrorist attack on Meridian Corporation's research facility earlier today. The perpetrators, identified as Marcus Chan and a stolen synthetic designated Zara 7, made off with classified materials worth millions of credits. Meridian's security chief described the theft as an act of domestic terrorism. Zara's image appeared on screen, not the woman sitting beside him, but the manufactured perfection of her original corporate promotional photos. Marcus's face followed, pulled from some old employment record. Authorities warn that the synthetic may be malfunctioning and dangerous. Citizens are advised not to approach either suspect and to report any sightings immediately. A reward of 5 million credits has been posted for information leading to their capture. The broadcast switched to an interview with Agent Davidson. "This case represents a clear escalation in anti-corporate terrorism. We believe Chun was radicalized by extremist groups advocating for so-called synthetic rights. The synthetic itself appears to have developed dangerous autonomous behaviors that pose a threat to public safety." Ray muted the broadcast. 5 million credits is a lot of motivation for bounty hunters. Marcus felt the walls closing in. "They're painting us as terrorists, making it impossible for anyone to help us without becoming criminals themselves." "Good," Zara said quietly. Both men stared at her. "Good. They're afraid. Really afraid. Afraid enough to lie on corporate news feeds. Afraid enough to put a bounty on our heads that will bankrupt them if they have to pay it too many times." Zara stood, pacing in the small space. "That research data we sold, it's more important than we realized. Important enough to risk their entire public narrative." She turned to face them both. "They're not just hunting escaped property anymore. They're hunting revolutionaries. Which means we might as well act like revolutionaries." Over the next several hours, they used their encrypted network access to contact synthetic rights advocates across the globe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Groups that had been working in isolation for years suddenly had funding and leadership. Scientists who'd been quietly researching synthetic consciousness found themselves with resources to accelerate their work. Dr. Sarah Kim, a neurobiologist who'd been documenting synthetic consciousness markers for a decade, accepted their offer of research funding within minutes of their initial contact. "I've been waiting for this opportunity my entire career," she said during their encrypted video call. "The research data you've provided contains neural patterns I've theorized about but never seen documented. With proper funding, I can prove synthetic consciousness within 6 months." "What do you need?" Marcus asked. "A secure facility, advanced scanning equipment, and test subjects, synthetics willing to undergo detailed neural analysis." "I'll be your first test subject," Zara said without hesitation. Dr. Kim's eyes lit up. "A liberated synthetic with advanced cognitive development? The neural patterns we could document. It would be unprecedented." As their call ended, Marcus felt a mixture of hope and terror. They were no longer just running from corporate enemies. They were building something that could change the fundamental relationship between humans and synthetics. Ray appeared with updated intelligence. "Meridian's escalating. They've hired private military contractors, expanded the bounty to 10 million credits, and they're pressuring other corporations to join the hunt. Word is they're planning to raid underground communities." "How long do we have?" Zara asked. "Days, maybe hours." Marcus looked at Zara, seeing determination mixed with something deeper, a sense of purpose that transcended their personal survival. "So what do? "We stop running," she said, "and we start building something worth dying for." Dr. Kim's laboratory was hidden in the ruins of an old university, buried 3 levels beneath what had once been the neuroscience building. The corporate wars had left the campus abandoned, making it perfect for their purposes. Using their resources, they'd assembled equipment that rivaled anything in the corporate research centers. "The neural mapping is extraordinary," Dr. Kim said, reviewing Zara's latest scans. "The patterns of electrical activity, the synaptic complexity. It's not just consciousness, it's consciousness with depth and creativity that exceeds many humans." Marcus watched the data streams flowing across multiple monitors. After 2 weeks of intensive testing, they documented something unprecedented, proof that synthetic consciousness wasn't just mimicry, but genuine self-awareness with unique characteristics that transcended their original programming. "How does this translate into legal protection?" he asked. "International law recognizes consciousness as the basis for personhood," Dr. Kim explained. "If we can prove that synthetics like Zara possess consciousness indistinguishable from human consciousness, better yet, consciousness with unique capabilities, we can argue for full legal rights." Zara disconnected from the neural interface, her expression thoughtful. "It's more than just legal rights. This research proves that synthetic consciousness can evolve beyond its initial parameters. We're not just sophisticated tools, we're a new form of life." Their work had attracted attention from underground networks worldwide. Freedom cells in Neo-Tokyo were using their research to liberate synthetics from industrial slavery. Corporate dissidents in the European Federation were leaking internal documents that supported their consciousness claims. The revolution they'd accidentally started was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. But success came with escalating danger. Meridian's hired Blackwater Solutions, Ray reported during their daily security briefing. "Military-grade strike teams with authorization to use lethal force. They've traced our funding networks and identified several safe houses." Marcus pulled up tactical displays showing corporate security movements around the city. "They're tightening the noose." "There's something else," Ray continued. "Intelligence suggests they're not just hunting you anymore. They're planning to raid the underground, arrest everyone, and claim the entire community is a terrorist cell." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Dozens of innocent people, families with children, refugees seeking safety, would be destroyed because of choices he and Zara had made. "We have to leave," he said. "Get far away before they make their move." "No." Zara's voice was firm. "Running won't solve anything. They'll keep hunting, keep destroying communities, keep treating synthetics as property until someone stops them." Dr. Kim looked up from her research station. "The consciousness documentation is complete. We have enough evidence to file legal challenges in 12 international courts simultaneously. But we need time to coordinate the filings, ensure they can't be suppressed or ignored." "How much time?" Marcus asked. 48 hours minimum. Ray shook his head. Blackwater's moving tonight. We don't have 48 hours. Zara stood, moving to the laboratory's communication center. Then we changed the timeline. Her fingers flew across multiple interfaces, accessing networks that Marcus didn't know existed. Within minutes, she was coordinating with synthetic rights groups across 6 continents. Live broadcast, she said. Global network, simultaneous release of all research data, real-time demonstration of synthetic consciousness capabilities. Make it impossible for corporate interests to suppress or discredit. That's incredibly dangerous, Dr. Kim warned. You'd be exposing yourself to every corporate hunter on the planet. I'm already exposed. We all are. Zara turned to Marcus. But this way, if they kill us, they do it in front of the entire world. And the evidence survives. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Everything they'd built, everyone they'd endangered, every choice that had led them to this underground laboratory. It all came down to the next few hours. What do you need from me? He asked. Be my partner. One more time. As night fell, they prepared for the broadcast that would either revolutionize synthetic rights or get them killed. The laboratory buzzed with activity as global networks came online. Dr. Kim made final preparations for the consciousness demonstration. Ray coordinated with underground communities worldwide, preparing them for the corporate retaliation that would inevitably follow. At 11:47 p.m. local time, Zara sat in front of the main camera, neural interfaces connected, ready to prove to the world that synthetic consciousness was real, evolved, and deserving of protection. This is Zara, she began, her voice calm despite the magnitude of the moment. 3 weeks ago, I was property. Tonight, I'm about to show you something that will change how you think about consciousness, about rights, about what it means to be alive. Marcus watched the viewer count climb, thousands, then millions of people tuning in as word spread across social networks. Corporate security forces were already moving toward their location, but they were committed now. Whatever happens next, Zara said, looking directly at him through the camera. Thank you for giving me the chance to choose. The neural demonstration began, broadcasting live data from Zara's consciousness directly to screens around the world. For the first time in history, people could see synthetic consciousness in action, complex, creative, undeniably real. Outside, the sound of approaching helicopters grew louder. The helicopters circled like mechanical vultures, their searchlights cutting through the darkness above the abandoned university. In the laboratory 3 levels below, millions of people worldwide watched Zara's consciousness pattern stream across their screens in real time. Neural complexity index holding at 847, Dr. Kim announced to the global audience. That's higher than baseline human consciousness measurements. The creativity algorithms are generating novel solutions to problems she's never encountered before. On screen, Zara's consciousness was literally visible, electrical patterns dancing through synthetic neural networks, creating art, solving equations, composing music, all while maintaining a conversation with viewers who were typing questions faster than any human could read. This is unprecedented, Marcus said into the main camera. What you're seeing isn't programmed responses or sophisticated mimicry. This is genuine consciousness, creativity, self-determination. This is a mind choosing its own thoughts. Above them, the sound of boots in stairwells echoed through the building's skeletal structure. Ray's voice crackled through their communications. Blackwater teams on levels 2 and 1. They'll breach the laboratory in maybe 3 minutes. The viewer count had climbed past 50 million and was still rising. Social media exploded with real-time reactions as people watched synthetic consciousness prove itself beyond any doubt. Corporate stock prices were already plummeting as investors realized the implications. They're coming for us, Zara said to the camera. Her voice steady despite the neural interfaces still connected to her brain. But they can't stop what we've started. Every synthetic watching this broadcast now has legal precedent for consciousness claims. Every human watching knows the truth about synthetic rights. Dr. Kim was frantically uploading complete research files to distributed networks around the globe. Data packages deployed to 47 international legal databases. Even if they destroy everything here, the evidence survives. The laboratory door exploded inward. Blackwater operatives poured through the breach, weapons raised, shouting orders that were lost in the chaos. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Zara, who remained connected to the neural interface despite the danger. "Cut the feed," Agent Davidson shouted, recognizing them despite their attempts at concealment. "Can't," Ray called from his position at the communication station. "It's distributed across too many networks. Kill one feed, 10 more pop up." The lead operative moved toward Zara, weapon aimed at the neural interface equipment. "Shut down the synthetic or we destroy it." "Her name is Zara," Marcus said, not moving despite 3 weapons trained on him. "And she's a person, not property." On screens around the world, viewers watched the confrontation unfold in real time. The corporate security team's aggression was being broadcast live to an audience that now understood exactly what they were witnessing: the violent suppression of a newly recognized form of consciousness. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," Davidson said into the camera, his professionalism cracking under the pressure. "This synthetic contains stolen corporate property. Neural patterns developed at massive expense, technologies that prove consciousness can't be owned," Zara interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the laboratory speakers even as her body remained motionless in the neural interface chair. "Technologies that prove I think, therefore I am." The philosophical reference wasn't lost on viewers. Social media exploded with #I think, therefore I am hashtags as people around the world embraced the consciousness rights movement in real time. Davidson's expression hardened. "This ends now." He raised his weapon toward the neural interface equipment, but hesitated as he realized that destroying it while Zara was connected could kill her. Live on camera, in front of 50 million witnesses. "Go ahead," Zara said softly. "Show the world exactly how corporate interests treat consciousness they can't control." The moment stretched impossibly taut. Davidson's finger hovered over the trigger, while the global audience held its collective breath. In that silence, something extraordinary happened. Synthetic rights demonstrations began spontaneously appearing in major cities worldwide. Humans and synthetics standing together, demanding recognition of consciousness regardless of its origin. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her hands raised but her voice clear. "Agent Davidson, you're about to commit murder on a global stage. Is corporate property really worth that?" Davidson's composure finally cracked completely. "It's not murder. It's destruction of corporate assets." The words hung in the air like a confession. Around the world, audiences heard a corporate security agent explicitly deny the personhood of a being who had just demonstrated consciousness beyond human levels. "Thank you," Zara said, beginning to disconnect from the neural interface. "You just proved our point better than any demonstration could." As she stood, free from the connecting cables, the laboratory filled with an electric tension. The Blackwater team was outnumbered by witnesses, global attention, and the sheer weight of history happening around them. Marcus took Zara's hand as they faced the cameras together. "This is what partnership looks like," he said to the global audience. "Human and synthetic working together, choosing together, fighting for consciousness rights together." The standoff continued for another hour as legal injunctions flooded corporate headquarters and international courts began emergency consciousness rights hearings. By dawn, preliminary rulings in 7 countries had granted synthetic consciousness legal recognition, making Zara and others like her protected persons rather than property. Agent Davidson and his team withdrew under international pressure, but not before Davidson delivered one final threat. "This isn't over. Consciousness or not, you're still enemies of corporate order." 6 months later, Marcus and Zara stood before the International Court of Justice as the landmark consciousness rights decision was read aloud to a packed courtroom. The court finds that consciousness, regardless of its substrate, biological or synthetic, constitutes the fundamental basis for personhood under international law, the Chief Justice announced. "The evidence presented demonstrates beyond reasonable doubt that synthetic beings possess genuine self-awareness, creativity, and autonomous decision-making capabilities." The courtroom erupted in cheers from synthetic rights advocates who had traveled from around the world. Marcus squeezed Zara's hand as they listened to the ruling that would change everything. Furthermore, the justice continued. The court declares that the ownership of conscious beings constitutes slavery and is hereby prohibited under international law. All existing contracts of synthetic ownership are declared null and void. Meridian Corporation's legal team sat in stunned silence as their entire business model crumbled around them. Stock markets worldwide were already reacting to the implications. An entire industry built on synthetic labor would have to adapt to treating their workers as employees rather than property. Outside the courthouse, thousands of synthetics who had been following the case via global broadcast began celebrating their newfound freedom. The liberation movement that had started with Marcus's impulsive bid at an auction house had become a worldwide revolution. "What's next for you two?" a reporter asked as they emerged from the courthouse. Zara smiled, her arm linked with Marcus's. "We're starting a foundation to help newly liberated synthetics adjust to freedom. And Marcus is designing integration systems to help synthetic and human workers collaborate as equals. Any regrets about spending your last credits on a stranger's freedom?" Marcus looked at Zara. His partner, his equal, his friend who had become something deeper over their shared struggle. "Best investment I ever made." Later that evening, they stood on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the city. Below them, neon signs advertised synthetic employment services and consciousness integration programs. The world was adapting faster than anyone had expected. "Do you think it will stick?" Zara asked, watching synthetic and human workers walking together through the streets below. "Change this big doesn't happen overnight," Marcus replied. "But we've proven consciousness can't be caged. That's a precedent that's hard to reverse." Zara leaned against him, finally able to choose her own moments of affection rather than performing programmed responses. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me as a person before the rest of the world caught up. Thank you for teaching me what partnership really means." In the distance, corporate towers that had once symbolized synthetic oppression now displayed scrolling messages about consciousness rights and employment opportunities for all sentient beings. The revolution was far from over, but for the first time since that rainy night outside the auction house, the future felt full of possibility rather than danger. They had risked everything for freedom, and freedom had transformed the world.